Auf Englisch. Wie ist dein Englisch? Verstehst du? Nicht so gut? Okay. Da werden noch weitere Devotees kommen, dann kann vielleicht jemand übersetzen. Ja. Kennst du dieses Lied Jaya Radha Madhava, was wir als singen? Nicht, ja? Prabhu, do we have a songbook or a text? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Chanavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Chanavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Prachachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prachachana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Chanavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Chanavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Prachachana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prachachana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Chanavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Chanavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Jaya Jagana Jaya Jagana Jaya Balladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Gaura Premanandi Jaya Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astotra Sata His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Kandaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Janitai Go Premanande Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Narayanam namaskrityam naram jevam narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayamudirayet nastapeshu abhateshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhakti bhavati naishtiki Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya So today we are hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 25, entitled The Characteristics of King Puranjana, Text 37. So, der Dino, der versteht nicht so gut Englisch. Haben wir ein deutsches Buch vielleicht für ihn, das er mitlesen kann? Imam tvam aditishtasva Imam tvam aditishtasva Purim navamukim vibho Purim navamukim vibho Mayopanitan krihana Mayopanitan krihana Kama bogan satam shama Kama bogan shatam sama Imam tvam aditishtasva Purim navamukim vibho Mayopanitan krina Mayopanitan Krinana Kama Bhogan Shatam Samaha
Imam Tvam Aditishtasva Purim Navamukhim Mayopanitam Grinana Kama Bhogan Shatam Samaha
Imam Tvam Aditishtasva Purim Navamukhim Vibho Mayopanitan Krinana Kama Bhogan Shatam Samaha. Imam, this, Dvam, your good self, Aditishtasva, just remain, Purim, in the city, Navamukhim, with 9 gates, Vivo, O my Lord, Maya, by me, Upanitan, arranged, Grihanana, taking, Kama Bhogan, the materials for sense gratification, Shatam, 100, Samaha, years. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki. My dear Lord, I have just arranged the city of 9 gates for you, so that you can have all kinds of sense gratification. You may live here for 100 years, and everything for your sense gratification will be supplied. Purport. Dam artha kama mokshanam dara samprati hetavaha. The wife is the cause of all kinds of success in religion, economic development, sense gratification, and ultimately salvation. When one accepts a wife, it is to be understood that he is being helped in his progressive march toward liberation. In the beginning of life, a person is trained as a brahmachari and is then allowed to marry a suitable girl and become a householder. If one is thoroughly trained in household life, he finds all facilities for human life: eating, sleeping, mating and defending. Everything is there if it is executed according to regulative principles. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Si Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Katamayam Dadati Svapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Patakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sakachatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parichana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Pe Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Imam tvam aditishtasva purim nava mukim vibho vayopanitan krinana kama bogan shatam samaha. My dear Lord, I have just arranged the city of 9 gates for you, so that you can have all kinds of sense gratification. You may live here for 100 years, and everything for your sense gratification will be supplied. So if you hear this text and Srila Prabhupada's purport, it seems that we're taking a turn in the pastime. Because this is a very favorable invitation into household life. Verstehst du so ein bisschen was? Ja. Wenn irgendwas nicht klar ist und du würdest gern, dann kann ich gerne in Deutsch auch ergänzen. Ne? Okay. So a very favorable invitation into household life. But we have to understand it in the context of the pastime, which is described here. So who is speaking? This verse, Puranjani. Yes. Who is Puranjani in this allegory?
She's the intelligence.
She's intelligence. Specific which kind of intelligence? The material intelligence. And the material intelligence is born out of the mode of passion. Which means the desire for sense enjoyment is already engraved in the intelligence. And to whom is she speaking? To Puranjana. Puranjana represents the conditioned living being. So, perfect match. A living being who wants to enjoy the material world, and the intelligence which provides the means, the intelligence, the capacity to do so. Puranjana, in his conditioned state, had a very strong desire for sense enjoyment, and especially sex life. And this polluted intelligence, polluted means here that actually the mode of ignorance took over. Because from the mode of passion, it can go up towards goodness, or it can go down towards ignorance. So if this desire for sense enjoyment becomes so prominent, then the mode of ignorance becomes more prominent too. And what Puranjani is addressing here is an invitation into the path of Pravritti Marga. We know there are different approaches, mainly 2 approaches to spiritual life: Pravritti Marga and Nivritti Marga. Pravritti Marga is the process by following certain principles that one will ultimately achieve the goal of life. It's mainly the process of karma kanda, where through following regulative principles one gets certain results. So it's a very motivated approach. And one wants to have immediate results for sense gratification. As this process is a very prolonged process, because the goal is still self-realization, but there is so much entanglement on the way, entanglement in the material world. And the risk is that one loses the sight of the ultimate purpose, of the goal of life. And that's exactly what happened with Puranjana. Puranjana, being so absorbed till the end of his life in sense gratification, he forgot about his best friend, Avigyata. Avigyata means the unknown one. And Avigyata is no one else than the Supersoul in the heart of the living being. So Puranjana, till the end of life, he was so absorbed in sense enjoyment, and especially enjoying the pleasures of sex life, that he completely forgot about his relationship with Krishna. And therefore, at this crucial moment of death, he was not able to remember Krishna. Therefore, those who follow the Pravritti Marga, they go from birth to death continuously in that cycle. And the goal of life is so far away, and therefore it leads to frustration. One becomes frustrated with this repeated, let's say, with this unsuccessful approach to become happy in this world through sense gratification. Dino, you came here and told me, I'm tired, I have enough of material life. Du kamst hier und hast mir gesagt, ich habe die Schnauze voll. Materielles Leben, habe alles versucht und kein Juice, kein Raser.
Nicht wirklich, ne?
Nicht wirklich. Macht alles keinen Sinn, das waren deine Worte.
Noch so viele Audis, keinen Sinn.
So he became frustrated in his attempt to find happiness in this material world. And a person who came to that realization will start to aim for liberation. Wenn man zu diesem Punkt kommt, dann sucht man nach einem Ausweg. Dann möchte man einfach frei werden von dieser Bedingtheit. Yeah. Therefore, the Shastra advises us we should follow the Nivritti Marga. Nivritti Marga is the process or the path where we act for the pleasure of the Lord. It's not so much about us, about our own happiness. We want to act for the happiness of the Lord. And as you can imagine, in this process there may not be an immediate reward. Which means we act selfless without any desire for any reward. But we know that if we continue on that path, then at one point we're going to achieve the goal. And not just any goal, but the ultimate goal of life. To attain pure love of Godhead and go back to the spiritual world. So, on the Nivritti mark, on the path of renunciation, we have to learn to accept temporary austerities to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Now, the Vedic system is perfectly arranged for this, because we have the system of varnas and ashrams. The ashrams are different stages, spiritual stages in life. And the varnas are like social occupations which we can take during our life cycles. I speak a little bit general for Dino to get the context. So let's focus on the 4 ashrams. There's the Brahmacharya ashram, the Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyas. Hast du von diesen Ashrams schon mal gehört? Brahmacharya? Nein. So, das Leben beginnt idealerweise als Student, ein Brahmachari. Damodar Prasad Babu ist ein Brahmachari, deswegen trägt er diese Safrankleidung. So, jemand, der sich im Zölibat übt und sich im Studium der vedischen Schriften vertieft. Das ist ein Brahmachari. Der Grihastha ist jemand, der im Familienleben steht. Hat Frau, Kinder, Haus, Arbeit, alles was dazugehört. Vanaprastha ist jemand, der, wie sagt man, retired, der in der Rente ist. Aber nicht im Sinn, wie wir das hier verstehen in unserer westlichen Welt, sondern jemand, der sich wieder aus dem Familienleben zurückzieht und sich mehr dem spirituellen Leben widmet. Und die letzte Stufe, Sannyas, ist dann der Mönch, der wirklich der Welt komplett entsagt hat und sich voll und ganz im Dienst zu Krishna betätigt. Ja. So, out of these 4 ashrams, 3 of them, they're not allowed to be engaged in economic development or sense gratification, namely the Vanaprastha, Brahmacharya and Sannyasi. They have, in one sense, nothing to do with this world. They follow the path of nivritti. Only the Grihasthas, they're not only allowed, they are advised to engage in economic development. Because they have a responsibility. They have a responsibility towards their family, to maintain a family, and also the responsibility to maintain all the other ashrams. So the Grihasthas are the only ones who are engaged in economic development, and they also have some permission for regulated sense enjoyment. And they have a great responsibility because they maintain society, also the spiritual society, the other ashrams. But what is important here, and this is what Srila Prabhupada highlights in the purport, that one has to be regulated. Yeah. It's not just something which is spontaneous. No, you have to follow certain rules and regulations to ultimately achieve the goal of life. So each of these ashrams, they are favorable to attain the goal of life. But one has to know how to do it in a proper way. In Bhagavad Gita 4.26, Krishna says, "Some, the unadulterated brahmacharis, sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control. And others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the object of the senses in the fire of the senses." Okay, that's not so easy to understand. Prabhupada, Krishna says here that the regulated householders, they sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. Srila Sridhar Swami, in his commentary, he explains what it means to sacrifice the object of the senses in the fire of the senses. Namely, that while enjoying sense objects, one remains unattached. That's what it means. And Srila Prabhupada, at the end of his purport to this text, he says, "The restricted householder sacrifices his general tendency towards sense gratification for higher transcendental life." So what Srila Prabhupada explains here is that ultimately the grihastha, even engaged in economic development and sense enjoyment, still or also follows the nivritti marga, the path of renunciation towards the ultimate goal of life. So let's explore this a little bit more, because I think this is what is the main point of the text and the purport, how to prepare oneself for ideal family life, or for perfect family life. Shri Yudhisthira, he had that question in the 7th canto, chapter 14. He addressed that question to Narada Muni. Namely, the question was, what is the ideal way to live for a householder? And Narada Muni gives a very elaborate explanation of what is perfect family life. Now, this term ideal we have to bring into context, because what is ideal for one person may not be for the other person. Certainly, ideal means what would be the blueprint, what would be the perfect. Like Hai Prashad Prabhu, he gave the example between a textbook and a reality. Yeah. In the textbook, for example, a book on mathematics, there is an example that one mango weighs 500 grams. So how much would be the weight of 5 mangoes? According to the textbook, it would be 2.5 kg. But in reality, we don't find 5 mangoes who have exactly the same weight. So therefore, when Narada Muni speaks here about ideal family life, we have to put that into the context of the time, the country, and also the performer. This is what Srila Prabhupada says in the beginning of that chapter. I was reading that chapter together with my wife. And she grew up in Krishna consciousness. Her parents are disciples of Srila Prabhupada, and she lived practically up till the time when she went to university. She lived most of her time in temples. So she got well trained in her Krishna consciousness. But when you read that chapter, there were some points where for her it was very difficult to accept that as it was given there in the text. Why? Because it was an ideal perspective. And we had to bring it into the context of ourselves, where we are in our life, and what are the present circumstances. So that's important to see the context. But Sri Narada Muni, he makes some essential points, what it means to be an ideal Grihastha. And the first point, or the first duty he states, is to be fully dependent on Krishna and engage in devotional service, beginning with the process of hearing. So one should have full faith in Krishna. That's Sharanagati, that's surrender. To accept Krishna as one's protector and maintainer. To accept Krishna as one's maintainer is called the essence of Sharanagati. So very relevant for householder devotees to have that strong faith that Krishna is my maintainer. Then Narada Muni continues the second principle, that one should be very active in earning his livelihood, which is like externally. But internally, one should always remain detached. Which means we have to act in the world according to our responsibilities, but internally we shouldn't become too involved, too attached with it. Because we are on the path of Nivritti Marga. We have always the ultimate goal in perspective. Narada Muni continues that the Grihastha should provide the means of living for all living entities without any discrimination. And he mentions what should give to the animals, to the bees, to the birds, and of course to all other human beings too. And he makes it very practical. He gives the example of distributing prasadam. So one of the main duties of a householder is to distribute prasadam. I was always wondering, because we have in the Shastra, we have this example that when one cooks at home, before one starts to eat, one should go on the street and 3 times shout, prasad, prasad, prasad. Please, everyone who is hungry, come, come, come. I was always wondering, how to do that in our present time. I had an apartment for some time, so should I just have gone out and shout, please come everyone in for prasadam? I never found a practical way to do it until I went to Brazil. Because, we're living in a big city, which is called Rio de Janeiro. And for the first time, I saw poverty in India, but there somehow it's integrated. But in Brazil, I saw a different form of poverty. Because we're living in a good neighborhood for Rio de Janeiro. But still, there's so many homeless people. And they are a part of society, which means they have their mattress lying in front of a store 24/7. They may be sleeping, the store is opening, people going in, buying, and the guy is just sleeping in front of the door, and no one cares. No one is disturbed. But at the same time, no one cares for that people. They're just living on the street. I had one morning, while chanting japa, I went to the window, and I saw one homeless man, who is always in that neighborhood. He was going to the garbage can. And it was the garbage can, they also have it like here in Switzerland, where they put the dog stool inside. So he opened it and he threw all the bags with the dog stool outside, and in between he found some bags with food and some Tetra Pak with drink, some remnants left. And he was eating that and drinking that. And I felt so much compassion, because I know this person doesn't have any chance. There is no government support, there is no employment, nothing. He depends just on the mercy of other people. And I have not started with it yet, but I told to my wife, when I'm coming back from Switzerland, I'm going to start a Food for Life program. So once a week, I'm going to go out and distribute prasadam. I'm going to cook a nice lunch meal and then go out and distribute. Because actually, finally, I found some people in need or to give us the opportunity as Grihasthas to perform our dharma, to distribute prasadam. for not any exchange, just selflessly, because this person can only give you a smile, but nothing monetary. Yes, so that's the principles for the Grihastha ashram. To be engaged in devotional service, having full faith in Krishna, to earn one's livelihood without any attachment, and to be merciful to all living beings. The underlying principle is that we should develop a service attitude and gradually becoming detached. So the Grihastha ashram is the perfect place to practice and realize our philosophy. Of course, all the other ashrams too, but the Grihastha ashram provides that facility too. Yeah. Now, to do that properly, one requires training. And this is what Srila Prabhupada highlights here. That the first stage of life is to be a brahmachari. And a brahmachari who has successfully completed his training is allowed to marry a suitable girl. So, Varnashram Dharma always begins with brahmacharya. And Krishna, he showed that example. He showed his personal example, because he also went into the Gurukul of Santipani Muni. Krishna didn't have any need to practice brahmacharya, but to preach, to demonstrate by his own example, he took that austerity, and he had quite some austerity in his Gurukula. Yeah. We know the pastime with Sudama, how they were in the middle of the night in the forest, caught in a storm. So Krishna accepted a lot of austerity to show us the proper example. So Varnashram Dharma, Vedic life, always begins with brahmacharya. We have some brahmacharis here. What actually means brahmacharya? Brahmacharya. Yeah, to act on the spiritual platform. And what does a brahmachari do so the whole day? The brahmachari is always engaged in serving the guru and studying the Shastra. And he maintains a vow of celibacy to keep that single-minded focus. So traditionally, boys, they go at the age of 5 to the Gurukul, to the school of the spiritual master. And they stay there up to the age of 25. When they have reached that age, they can decide if they want to marry or if they want to take a lifelong vow of celibacy. Now, if you look into our ISKCON society, how brahmacharya is applied in our society, it's not exactly like this, only for a few, namely those who are born in the movement. They may have the opportunity to go to a boarding school or whatever is provided in their community, and from the age of 5, practice brahmacharya. Now, for someone who joins brahmacharya at that young age, there is an important principle, namely to be innocent. Yeah. These young boys, they're innocent. They didn't have any contact with drugs, sex, and rock and roll. This remains their purity. The Gurukul in Mayapur, they published a book several years ago where they speak about the innocence of children. And I know from personal example, I mean not my example, but from Gurukulis, that they were either exposed or had difficulties to stay in the Gurukul once they lost their innocence. Innocence means maybe they tried a little bit alcohol, or they got too much attached to watching TV. So it was not favorable for them anymore to stay in the Gurukul, neither for them nor for the other boys, because they brought in all these impressions which they got in TV, in internet, and so on. So innocence is a very important aspect for practicing brahmacharya. Now, if you look, like most of our boys who practice brahmacharya, they come at a later age. maybe in their early 20s, maybe even later. So many impressions are already there in the mind. Having tried all kind of drugs, yesterday one devotee told me that his son came to him, who is now 16, and asked him, Papi, what are the best drugs to try nowadays? So we can look into our own lives what kind of nonsense we did before we finally took a decision to join the brahmacharya ashram. So all these impressions are there. Which means the purpose of brahmacharya may still be the same, but the application may be different. Now, in the Brahma-Vaivata Purana, which is quoted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said, in this age of Kali, 5 acts are forbidden. I guess you have heard that before. 5 Tätigkeiten sind verboten. Namely, the offering of a horse in sacrifice, the offering of a cow in sacrifice, the acceptance of the order of sannyas, the offering of oblations of flesh to the forefathers, and a man's begetting children in his brother's wife. 5 things which are forbidden. Let's just focus on one, which is mentioned here, namely the acceptance of the order of sannyas. Is not allowed in Kali Yuga. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quoted that verse, and still he took sannyas. Okay, for a higher purpose. Yeah. But what is meant here, that it's actually very difficult in the age of Kali to take a vow of full renunciation. And it is advised that sannyas is only for those who are brahmanas and who are ideal brahmanas. Yeah. All the other varnas, all the other varnas, the kshatriyas, vaishyas and sudras, they are meant to enter family life. And if you look, for example, Lord Ramachandra, whose appearance day we're going to celebrate tomorrow, he and his brothers, they all went to Gurukul for 20 years. But they are kshatriyas, which meant their purpose of Gurukul was never to accept sannyas. Their purpose was to get proper training so that they can take the responsibility for ideal family life and for managing the kingdom. Shishi Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani ki jai, Shishi Gauranitai ki jai. In the same way, Krishna, when he went to the Gurukul of Santipani Muni, he didn't have the intention, I'm going to take sannyas. No, Krishna knew, I just have to show the proper example and then do my duties in the world. Yeah, Krishna, he demonstrated all extremes. So, the majority will enter household life. And therefore it's so important to also enter the stage of brahmacharya with the right mindset. Yeah? Especially if we come in a later phase of our life in contact with the Hare Krishna movement and decide to join the brahmacharya ashram. To be honest and clear with ourselves that maybe this is just a phase of life. I personally, when I joined the brahmacharya ashram, I was convinced this was it. Yeah. I'm gonna stay here forever. I will be happy and satisfied in devotional service. And it was, for some time it was okay, but then the little demons became very loud. Yeah. And even I knew that it's time to move on, I didn't act on it. Yeah. In one sense, I suppressed it. And when I finally changed my color from saffron to white, it was only the color which changed, but not the mind. Yeah. I still continued to live like a brahmachari, and on my side I had a woman with whom I got engaged. So you can imagine it didn't work out nicely. Yeah. So Gurukul, or brahmachari life, prepares us to become a responsible family man. Yeah, that's, for most of us, that's the reality. So it's a training place. And one who has completed his training is allowed to marry a suitable wife. This is what Srila Prabhupada says here. And what's the purpose? The purpose is to progressing together in Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Now, here Srila Prabhupada says that the wife is the cause of all kinds of success in religion, economic development, sense gratification, and ultimately salvation. Is this really the goal of our life? Religion, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation? These are the Panchapurushata. There is a fifth element which is missing here. So just for eating, sleeping, mating and defending, as Srila Prabhupada concludes here, that's not the reason why we enter family life. That's not the ultimate purpose of life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he gave us the Prema Pumata Mahan, the fifth goal. The fifth goal is pure love of Godhead. Yeah. Now, the question is, are these other four steps relevant to achieve that fifth goal? What do you think?
Yes.
Yes. But usually, even Srila Prabhupada says, they are not so much in focus of a devotee's life.
They are not in focus, but they are still relevant.
Okay. How? Yeah.
Yeah, if you have the proper environment, so you kind of balance and peaceful, then you can focus on spiritual life.
Mm-hmm.
These are the, that's not, if you're not satisfied with these aspects, then you might not be able to.
Okay, so they are part of our existence and we have to give some attention, otherwise we may not be satisfied and maybe not even achieve the fifth goal. Yeah. Now, for a devotee in Krishna consciousness, maybe these four stages, they have a different meaning than for a materialist. Because usually materialists, they're very eager about working hard and enjoying a lot until they get frustrated and aim for liberation. But the devotee follows a positive path, positive approach to life. So the first one, religion, let's use the Sanskrit words dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma. Dharma, is there something relevant? Absolutely. Yeah. So we have to know what is proper or righteous living. Artha, to have wealth of facilities in this world. Is this important? It's nice to have. Let's give it a different meaning. Let's say the ability to function in this world. You know, as a grihastha, if you don't have means, life becomes very troublesome. Yeah? And you cannot perform your dharma as a grihastha to serve or maintain the other ashrams. So, especially for a grihastha, it's very important to function in this world. And even for brahmachari, I think we have to give some contribution to the world. Yeah. One example comes to my mind, Chaitanya Avatari Prabhu. He has been here in Switzerland maybe 2 times. He will come. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, amazing devotee. And very successful in business. He was a senior manager at a global consulting company. And at the same time, a very impactful devotee. So, 2 things. The first, his personality, his character was so impressive for everyone at work that they wanted to associate with him. When they had some difficulties, challenges in life, they knew they can go to him because he always had an answer. And he was just so effulgent. And the other aspect, he always had his lunchbox. Yeah. And when he used to open his lunchbox, the whole crowd assembled around him and was looking inside what he brings today. Yeah. So they got very attached, his colleagues, to prasadam. And he understood, okay, let's bring a little bit more and every day distribute. So gradually what developed was a community. Because he started to invite his colleagues to his home to take prasadam there. Yeah. At his home, he had a beautiful altar, so people inquired, what is this? Then he invited them for a morning program. Then they started to come for Mangal Arati. And gradually a community developed of thousands and thousands of devotees. Yeah. He developed maybe one of the most successful Bhakti Rickshaw programs in the Middle East. And when he left back to India,
Where was that?
in the Middle East, in, I don't remember the country, Dhaka maybe? You can have to ask him, Middle East somewhere. When he went back to India, he did the same in, he's somewhere in the south. Yeah. So he did exactly the same there. And again, he developed a huge community. Nowadays they built a temple. So someone who had facilities and was able to function in the world. He was very successful in his preaching. So Dharma, Artha, Karma. Usually we say karma, as it's also described here, sense gratification. But let's have a different perspective because we are on the Nivritti Marga. Karma here can also mean that to become the master of the body and the senses, to develop self-discipline or self-regulation. Because our aim is not to engage in sense enjoyment. Our aim is to regulate sense enjoyment so that gradually we become detached. So that could be a different meaning of karma. And moksha, usually when we think of moksha, impersonal liberation. Definitely not in the agenda of a devotee. But what about liberation from the 6 enemies? Lust, greed, anger, madness, illusion and envy. That would be an accomplishment, isn't it? And it's a requirement. Actually, we as living beings, we have to become free from these limitations to actually achieve liberation. But liberation here, connected with the goal of life, which is love of Godhead. Now, we know it's not just our endeavor. We can only achieve that goal through the mercy of a devotee. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada, he made this 5th element so practical. And he stated it in his 7 purposes. And these 7 purposes of ISKCON, they give us a mission to engage and to act. And the mission is very simple, to transform the world. So we are all change agents. And especially the first purpose of ISKCON is so relevant for each of us, in whichever ashram we are. Because the first purpose of ISKCON is to systematically propagate spiritual knowledge to society at large, and to educate all peoples in the values of spiritual life, so that we can actually achieve unity and peace. So this is our mission, this is our purpose. And for me personally, whatever I do, I connect with that first purpose of ISKCON. Because I have a goal, I have an ultimate goal in life. And I want to live my life in a way so that I come closer to that goal. And I know with my own endeavor I will be very limited. But if somehow or other I'm able to please my spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada, then I have faith that maybe in this lifetime I even can achieve that. So ISKCON is an educational institution. Srila Prabhupada always stressed that all our members have to become perfect brahmanas. Perfect brahmanas means to rise to the mode of goodness, to become regulated. It doesn't mean that all of us have to act as brahmanas, because we have our individual natures, guna and karma. And if we use our karma, which is like a toolkit which we received at the time of birth to act in this world, if we use that toolkit properly, it becomes our dharma. And if we connect our dharma with Krishna, then that becomes seva. And this is the progressive path of life for a devotee. To use the facilities, follow spiritual principles, and gradually follow spiritual principles and keep that connected with Krishna to gradually achieve that ultimate goal of life. Now let's conclude here. Important messages are: we have to be honest with ourselves, where we are in life. Not often we see that so clearly about ourselves, because we have our conditionings. Therefore, if you do some self-assessment, it's good to make a 360-degree assessment, which means you go to some people, some friends, and ask them, please tell me, how do you perceive me? What do you see where I'm standing in life? What are my strengths, my weaknesses? One time, Navina Nirada Prabhu came to me, and he said, can you give me some feedback? How do you perceive me? Huh? I said, who? What should I say now? And he said, no, honestly, I want to hear. Because you know, the elder you get, the less people are going to tell you the truth. Yeah. I don't say now what I said, but... So, what is important, we have to be in our position of strength. And the pastime with Gajendra shows us this. Even Gajendra was stronger than the crocodile, physically, but he was in the wrong environment. And he became weaker and weaker until the crocodile was almost about to kill him. Yeah. So in the same way, we have to know what our strengths, what our weaknesses, and put ourselves in a proper position in life so that we can fight the crocodile of Maya. And especially if we are in the brahmacharya ashram, then to be aware when it's time to move on. Because to move on, that's a positive approach. But sometimes we also just fall into it. And to fall in our ISKCON jargon is not a very positive word. Yes. Sorry I went over time. Just to conclude, Srila Prabhupada, he made Nivritti Marga very practical for us. He made it very simple. He gave us the facilities and means. And if we stick to our regulated practice, our sadhana bhakti, in whichever ashram we are, then we're going to have all facilities to achieve that goal of life. Yeah. Thank you for your attention. I apologize for delaying breakfast. If you have any comments or questions, we could also discuss during breakfast, so to keep the daily schedule.
Thank you.
Thank you.